Hello, everyone. This is our lecture about conclusions, and specifically concluding our speeches, our presentations. This is an important part of our speeches and presentations because it's been proven again and again and again that really people remember the first things and the last things, the first part and the last part of presentations, of stories even. They remember how things begin and end. The middle part, not as much. There's a lot of details that can be forgotten very easily just because it's in the middle. If any of you play video games, this is a very common thing to have in single-player games, where you'll have an awesome, great beginning, and then you have the middle part, and then you have the huge ending, and you're like, oh, okay, that was something. So it's often the middle part that drags on, and that's the part that gets forgotten. So if you finish strong, then people will remember your activity, your speech, your project much better and much more favorably. This is something that is actually very helpful to finish strong with our lessons as well. If this works out with your individual lessons, your semesters, and also if the event comes up, the occasion arises where you have to teach a summer or winter camp class, if you finish strong, the students are happier, and their evaluations of you and your project, your program, are higher. So finishing strong, everyone ends on a happy note, and everyone's happier with higher ratings. We need to think of ways to finish our speeches that are better than, well, okay, my time's up. Drive safely. That's perfectly polite and kind, but it's not memorable. So here are 3 methods that we can help end or conclude our presentations or speeches. 1, we see again powerful quotation. Quotations, especially English speakers, love quotations. It is something that we love, these connections to the great people of our history. It's just what we do. So it's part of a facet of English language to use quotations in context and out of context for our purposes. If you recall the Kennedy speech at Rice Stadium, he gave, it was 16 minutes long, and the part that I grew up knowing was just, we choose to do things because they are hard. Less than 3 seconds out of that whole speech, which has other merits. But that quotation has been used on me when I was growing up in lots of different contexts to help try to motivate me and get me to do better. And but there's a lot more context that could have been used. But that still, quotations are very much a popular tool in the English language. The second method we have is to challenge your audience to do something. This is often also called the call to action. If any of you pay attention to the marketing language that is used nowadays, they don't say the word challenge. They say the word call to action. This is when they say, for example, on YouTube, when they say, hey, everybody, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to press the bell so you don't miss a single video. That's the call to action. That's a challenge. And it's really stupid. And I find it insulting, personally. Like, this jerk is going to tell me what to do. But it turns out it works. If you don't tell people to press subscribe or press like, they don't do it. You have to tell them what to do. The general audience. Individuals are intelligent. People, groups are mindless and dumb. And they are That's where we get the herd mentality. And lastly, callback. Our third method is called callback, and that is when you go back to drawing upon a memory or got an earlier moment in your speech. This goes very well with the storytelling method of introducing. If you remember, if you have a story that you're telling, you bring it up throughout the presentation, and then at the end you call back to it and you show how it was all a unified single piece of narrative, and it can be done very effectively. You might have heard this done especially in if you go to church. Some of the better pastors or priests, they will use this method with great effectiveness of telling a story and then weaving it into relatable and comprehensible information for our daily lives, for our spiritual needs. Certain comedians, stand-up comedians, are very good at this as well. The American Dave Chappelle, he's very good at the callback. And then it makes it funnier and funnier as we go along. All right, so when you have your conclusion, your ending, what do you want the people to do or feel at the end? Everything has a purpose, so to speak, and that you are up in front for a reason. You're up there talking for a reason. You're given a task. You have a task to do. What are you trying to get the audience to do? What are you trying to get your students to do, your listener? Now, it can be very simple. And a comedian is just going up there telling jokes to get people to laugh. They're trying to be funny. That's it. That's their goal. I saw in the news that the TV show Gag Concert, they're taking a break because they're not doing their job. People aren't watching them because they're not finding it funny anymore. They're doing the same jokes again and again and again. And you do one joke one time, it's hilarious. You do it 1,000 times to the same audience, it's not funny anymore. So this is something you'll have to be aware of when you're teaching as well, especially when you're teaching the same students. Your jokes and your methods might need to change a little bit so that they stay fresh for your audience, for your students. That's something I learned. And it can be hard, but it's something. So what is your job in your presentation, in your lesson, in your speech? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to educate? Are you trying to motivate, inspire? Are you trying to sell them something? Do you want them to remember something or remember a person? Are you trying to commemorate some event? Every speech has a purpose in some way, even if it's very simple in that you're trying to entertain with light, jokes about farting, or you're trying to inspire them to go out into the streets and protest and starve themselves for a greater purpose. So you'll need to choose your ending that will best support your goal, your purpose. So here's the first method with ending a speech with a powerful quotation. So this is the example. So your speech purpose is to inspire people to join your cause. It could be environmental, volunteering to help disabled people or homeless or people living in poverty or single mothers, or any demographic or anything really. So we summarize the main points, and we want to finish with a great statement to make people go, yeah, woo, we're going to join you. We're going to open our wallets and give you money and support you. These are things. So borrowing words from revered or respected leaders aligns your cause with those they fought for. Powerfully blending the past with the present. This is a sneaky method, to be honest. Borrowing words from a revered and respected leader. So borrowing and stealing, when talking creatively, are very similar. There, in America, might be other English-speaking places too, but I know we heard it in America, in that good authors borrow from other books. Great authors steal. So it's something that in the creative works we do. We borrow and steal from other people. Usually not wholesale. We don't take the whole thing. We don't take the entire song. We take parts of the song that we liked and blend it with our own. We fuse it. That's where we have the idea of fusion. That's literally what it is. I'm going to pause right now and give you an example. If I say fusion food, what do you think of? You're going to think, maybe you're going to think of it's kind of a new, cool food that's like new. You're taking one thing and another, and you mash it together and make a new thing. And that's true, especially how we say that, fusion restaurant. That's how we use it. But some foods that we now think as traditional foods of certain places, they're fusion foods. I'll give you an example of this. Look here. This is spaghetti. And where is spaghetti from? We have spaghetti and meatballs, spaghetti and cheese, lots of wonderful things. It's wonderful. It's delicious. But where is it from? Italy, right? It's from Italy. Now, we look at the ingredients of spaghetti. Where are noodles from? They're not from Europe. Europeans didn't make noodles by themselves. Noodles are from East Asia. And so the idea of noodles and making noodles had to travel from East Asia, from Korea, Japan, China, Vietnam, across Asia to Europe. And that's what, they did do that. They had lots of trade. Now, this red stuff, how does that get the sauce get that red color? That's right, tomatoes. Where are tomatoes from? That's right. They're from South America. They're from Peru, Ecuador. They're from Western South America. They're not from Europe. They're not native to Italy. So the Italian representative food, their 대표적인 음식, is something that they could not make in Italy by themselves. It's something where they borrowed from different places, put them together, and made their own thing. So they borrowed or they stole. It's up to you what words. I don't want to say that they stole the noodles, the idea of noodles or the tomato, but they did borrow them, and they're never going to give them back because spaghetti is delicious. But this is an example of a literal example of fusion, of taking ideas or things or something and making it and blending it into something new that's yours. The spaghetti is an example of blending ideas and things and making it new. We do this in speech as well. We can borrow the words from the past and blend them with the present to make a statement. Here's an example. So Martin Luther King Jr., he was a civil rights for African American, for black people in America, said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." End quote. Now is the time to decide. Now is the time to act. Now, where do you stand? So we're borrowing a quote from a greatly respected and revered person who's now become a demigod, and we're using it for our purposes. We're using his words for our purposes. I'm making it sound much more negative because it is kind of, because we don't know what would Martin Luther King Jr. agree with all movements using his words? Probably not, but unfortunately, he can't say anything now. He became a martyr. So, but we do this all the time. We borrow other people's words and make them our words. We use them. And this happens with, especially with people who are no longer with us, who have died, because they can't correct people on their misuse. So it's a very powerful tool. I don't think it's the most ethical, but it is incredibly powerful and very effective. The next method is ending your speech with a challenge, the call to action. So in this example, your speech purpose is to motivate your sales force. This is, in an office. You've covered the main points in the body of it, including introducing an incentive, a holiday as a reward for the best sales figures. So whoever does the best work gets an extra vacation. So you've reiterated those main points and reached the closing sentences. The end is a challenge. Here's the example. You have 3 weeks from the time you leave this hall to make that dream family holiday in New Zealand yours. Can you do it? Will you do it? The kids will love it. Your wife will love it. Do it now! So this is a direct challenge, a direct call to action. We see this all the time on YouTube. People calling you call to actions to like, subscribe, press the bell icon, share the video, comment, like, or dislike. It turns out that if you dislike a video, it's the same as liking the video, because all YouTube cares about is engagement. If you write a comment saying, hey, you're stupid, fat, and ugly, you shouldn't make videos anymore, YouTube doesn't care. They just see a comment. A comment is a comment is a comment to YouTube. And if there's lots of comments, that boosts the video to other people. For one of the other classes, for the English pronunciation class that I have, I made an introduction video, and a lot of students, they did their homework as a YouTube comment. So for that video, I've got lots of comments on it. And so that video has a lot more views from other people who got suggested that video, or it was put on the autoplay queue. And so that video, which should only have less than 200 views, it has over 1,000. Now, most of those people, they watched for 1 second and turned it off. So, it didn't really help me. But that is an example where my incidental challenge, as I said, hey, make sure that you write down your homework about what you're doing here. And the challenges can be very effective. So this example in here, this is a quite literal challenge for a literal prize, but it can also be a moral or emotional challenge where you are trying to get the audience to do something out of a moral feeling or a sense of community. Again, I keep using YouTube as an example. This happens a lot where they make nicknames for their fan base, and they challenge their fans to get 5,000 likes or 20,000 likes on their video. And if they don't get that, then it's the community's fault. It's the audience's fault. This creates a personal, not an actual personal connection. It's called a para-relationship, a parasocial relationship between the viewer, the audience, and the content creator. And this can be exploited, of course, for money, which happens a lot, but it is a very effective way. And especially if you go back and watch other speeches that I've shown you throughout this semester, how many of those speeches end with a direct challenge? A whole lot. Last week, or it was 2 weeks ago now, from the movie Network, the short speech of "Turn off your TVs." That's what the guy was ending. He ended the speech with "Turn off your TVs right now. Turn them off. Turn them off. Turn them off." He was trying to get people to do that. He was challenging the TV watching audience to stop watching it. And there's other more positive things, challenges like Kennedy, again, challenging America to get involved, to get invested emotionally, monetarily, physically invested in the space race against the Soviet Union. So ending speech challenges to get your audience to be active. It can be a very effective method. Especially, students can also respond well to it as well. All right. Third method, ending the speech with a callback. Calling back to a memory and getting people to remember. And thanks. So, example, your speech purpose is to honor the memory of a dear friend who passed away. So this is usually at a funeral, for example. So we briefly revisited the principal points of your speech and wish to leave the audience with a happy, compelling image to dwell on. Earlier in the speech, you told a poignant story. It's that you return to or call back. So usually in funerals, you want people, even though it's a very sad time, you want to talk about how great the person is. You want to talk about stories about how wonderful they were, how they helped people, how caring they were, how loving, how funny, how creative they were. You want to have a good time. Generally. Now, not weddings. Funerals are sad moments, yes, and that's okay. It's okay to be sad. But often, you want people to remember, and you want to remember the good things about the person who passed away. My grandmother passed away last year, and the pastor who talked did a terrible job. He didn't say one word about how great a woman my grandmother was. He just talked about, you should go back to Jesus and make sure you can go to heaven, not go to hell. I already knew that. You don't need to tell me now. Talk about my grandmother. I was not happy with him. Other people gave very nicer speeches. It was her funeral. It wasn't about going to heaven or hell. Now, so that was actually, now that I'm properly thinking about it, that was actually an example of a failed challenge by the pastor. He attempted to end his speech with a challenge about conversion, about going back to Jesus. But really, the situation called for a nice, good callback about my grandmother, because that's what the situation was. So you'll need to remember and pay attention to what the situation is, so you can better use the different methods for your purposes. You can't use them interchangeably easily. You need to know which will be best for your situation. Okay. Here's the example they give. Remember that picnic table? Every blue sky summer's day, I'll see Amy in my mind. Her red picnic rug will be spread out in green grass under the shade of an old oak tree. There'll be food, friends, and laughter. I'll see her smile and her pleasure at sharing the simple things. And I know what she say, too. I can hear her. Come on, try a piece of pie. My passing is not the end of the world, you know. So this is an example of a just callback. And you know what? That's a nice thing. It feels nice. And that's what the situation, what the conditions of the speech called for. Now, those are three nice methods to end our speeches on, our presentations, or what have you on. Here are some that are not good, and we got 7 of them. 1, having no conclusion. Don't do that. Whimpering out on a weak, that's all, type of speech. That's not good. It's not a good way to end a speech. But there are examples of powerful speeches ending that way. Not timing your speech and running out of it before your prepared conclusion. This is something that you'll need to be aware of, especially when you're doing lessons. You will have in elementary school, 40 minutes. But will you really have 40 minutes? Sometimes you'll have 39. Sometimes you'll have 38. Sometimes you get 20. And you'll need to adapt and be prepared to work within those time constraints. So timing is important for that. Number 3, ending with an apology. Apologies in English, in American English especially, not so much in, like, for example, Canadian English. To apologize undermines your credibility. To say sorry means that you don't know what you're talking about. So we say, sorry for going on so long. I know it can be a bit boring listening to someone like me. It sounds like you wasted everyone's time. Now, there'll be situations where you need to talk about this, especially if you do go for too long. But that goes into timing your speech. Try not to apologize too much. It is not helpful, and it can be used against you. Apologizing can be seen as admission of fault, of guilt, that you did something wrong. So try not to end on a weak note like that. Number 4, I'm very guilty of. Adding new material just as you finish confuses your audience. I've done it a lot. So if we're giving new material to our students, to our audience, that needs to be in the body of the speech, not the end, because otherwise, everyone's, kind of ready to go home, ready to go to the next class, ready to stretch their legs, and you're giving them new material, new information, and they're turning off their ears. I've done this a lot in my lessons, so try not to do it. And 5, making the ending too long in comparison to the rest of your speech. Try to make sure your conclusion is brief. Try to make sure it fits time-wise. The longest part of your speech, your presentation, should be the body. That's the main meat of the matter. Think of a restaurant which serves 3-course meal. You have the appetizer, the little food before, which often can be a salad or soup. Then you get your main dish. That's where your big food is, your meat and your potatoes, and you got your vegetables and all those wonderful things. And then you've got your after main dish, dessert, which could be, in some places, fruit or something sweet, like cake or salad to cleanse the palate, things like that. So make sure you keep your ending make sure you keep your ending from being too long. Number 6, using a different style or tone that doesn't fit with what went before it. This is often tonally, emotionally toned. Think about if you're being very stern or serious for most of your speech and then you end all nice and buddy-buddy, tonally quite confusing. Or if you get very angry and passionate at the end when there's no reason for it, it makes it sound like you're a crazy person. And that can be twisted and embarrassing. So be aware of that you want to keep a single tone or make it a sensical tone. Either you start small and get bigger and bigger and bigger, which does happen in situations, certainly. Or you keep a consistent tone, emotional and verbal tone. And lastly, number 7, ending abruptly without preparing the audience for the conclusion. So this goes back to last week's lesson about transitions. You need to have if you just finish and the audience is going, huh? Are we done? We can go to lunch? That's a bad speech. We need to prepare our audience, our students, for the end. It's things to be aware of. So in this short lecture, we discussed concluding our speeches, our presentations, our lessons. I want us to be aware that these methods that I'm trying to have you remember and understand, you're going to use them when you're teaching. So it's not just for speeches. It's is for more things. And we've got the 3 methods of using a quote for your purposes, of having a challenge or call to action, and also using the callback method to engage your audience. Something important is to remember is, what purpose does your speech have? What do you want the audience to do, to know, to feel at the end of it? And also, we went over 7 wrong ways to end a speech, a class. And I've done a lot of them because that's part of the growing process. So that ends our conclusion lesson. Pretty cool. Now, what I like you to do is, it's important that we use this, and we're going to synthesize it for our purposes. But this week, you're also taking your midterm test. I need you to do your midterm test before 11 p.m. on Wednesday. Because if you start it at 11 p.m. or 11:30 p.m., you might not have enough time to actually finish it. And that's a silly reason to not finish it, to lose points. So please don't do that. I hope this sounds a lot better than last week's lecture as well. I purchased a microphone, and I think it sounds better. I get to pretend I'm on the radio. So if you have any questions or concerns, please write them on the Q&A. We'll have a discussion questions as well. We're doing quite well. So please enjoy your weekend, enjoy your weeks, and hopefully it will start warming up. It's quite cool today in Jinjan. All right. Stay safe, and goodbye.